If you close your eyes and imagine the American dream, what do you see? You probably see a house with a white picket fence. You see a car in the driveway. But most of all, you see the ending. You see a silver-haired couple walking on a beach in Florida. You see a gold watch. You see a farewell party at the office, followed by 20 years of unadulterated leisure, golf courses, cruise ships, and time with the grandchildren. We take this narrative for granted. We assume it is a natural law of the universe, like gravity or the tides. You go to school. You get a job. You work for 40 years. And then, at age 65, you stop. You are handed a ticket to the golden years. The social contract says, you did your part, now the system will take care of you. But what if I told you that this idea, the very concept of retirement, is a historical anomaly, a blip on the radar of human existence? For 99.9% of human history, retirement did not exist. It was not even a word in the vocabulary of the average person. If you were alive, you worked. If you couldn't work, you relied on your family, or you died. The concept of paying people to do nothing was invented by one man in one specific year for a cynical political reason that has nothing to do with your well-being. It was a social experiment designed in 1889, and here is the terrifying truth that no politician will stand on a podium and tell you. The math behind that experiment has broken. The gears of the machine have ground to a halt. The golden age of retirement is over. It was a temporary window of time that is now closed. We are returning to the historical norm, and if you are banking on the government to save you, you are betting your survival on a system that was mathematically designed to fail from the very beginning. To understand why the system is collapsing, we must first travel back in time to understand what came before it. For thousands of years, the economic model of humanity was simple: intergenerational dependency. In an agrarian society, you didn't save money for old age. You saved people. You had children not just out of love, but as a biological insurance policy. When you were young and strong, you cared for your parents. When you were old and frail, your children cared for you. There was no state pension. There was no 401k. There was no Social Security Administration. Your assets were your family and your land. There was no magic age where you stopped contributing. You worked until your body physically gave out. An 80-year-old blacksmith didn't retire to a villa in Tuscany. He just swung the hammer a little slower, or he moved to lighter tasks like stoking the fire or training the apprentices. An elderly woman didn't go on a cruise. She spun wool and watched the infants while the young adults worked the fields. Work was life. Life was work. The two were inseparable. But in the late 19th century, the Industrial Revolution broke this ancient contract. It shattered the family unit. Young people moved from the farms to the smoke-filled cities to work in factories. Families were separated by hundreds of miles. The elderly were left behind in the villages, destitute and alone. Without their children to care for them, they starved. At the same time, a new dangerous idea was spreading across Europe like a virus: socialism, Marxism. The factory workers were angry. They were working 14-hour days in dangerous conditions, and when they got too old to work, they were discarded like broken machinery. They wanted a revolution. They wanted to overthrow the state. Enter Otto von Bismarck, the Iron Chancellor of Germany. Bismarck was not a bleeding-heart liberal. He was a conservative monarchist. He was a man of blood and iron who had unified Germany through war. He hated the socialists, but he was a genius strategist. He realized that to stop the socialists from taking over, he had to bribe the working class. He had to give them something the socialists promised, but deliver it through the mechanisms of the state, thereby buying their loyalty to the Kaiser. In 1889, Bismarck proposed a radical new idea. The state would provide a pension to anyone over a certain age. He called it old age and disability insurance. It was the first time in history a government promised to pay you for simply being alive. But here is the catch. The secret math that Bismarck knew, and that modern politicians conveniently ignore. Bismarck set the retirement age at 70. Why 70? Because in 1889, the average life expectancy in Germany was roughly 45 years. Even if you survived childhood diseases, living to 70 was a statistical rarity. Bismarck wasn't planning to pay everyone. He designed a system where 90% of the workers would pay in their entire lives, but die before they ever took a dime out. It was a brilliant Ponzi scheme. It bought social peace for the price of a promise he almost never had to keep. The few people who did live to 70 didn't live much longer. The state could easily afford to support them because there were so few of them. It wasn't welfare, it was actuarial cynicism disguised as benevolence. America copied this model 46 years later. In 1935, in the depths of the Great Depression, President Franklin D. Roosevelt signed the Social Security Act. They set the retirement age at 65. Again, look at the math of the time. In 1935, the average life expectancy in America was barely 62. Most people were expected to die on the job. Social Security was designed as a safety net for the very few who lived past the statistical average. It was never intended to fund a 20-year vacation for the entire population. But then, something unexpected happened. Something that broke Bismarck's math and set the stage for the crisis we face today. After World War II, we had the baby boom. Suddenly, there were millions of young workers entering the system. In 1950, there were 16 workers paying taxes for every one retiree collecting benefits. The ratio was 16-1. The system was flush with cash. The government had more money than it knew what to do with. Politicians, being politicians, realized they could buy votes with this surplus. They increased benefits, they lowered the retirement age, they added cost of living adjustments. They promised the moon because the money was pouring in from the boomer generation. This created the golden age of retirement. For a brief 50-year window, roughly from 1950 to 2000, it actually worked. You could work at a factory, retire at 62 with a defined benefit pension, and live comfortably for another 15 years. This is the memory our parents and grandparents have. This is the expectation they passed down to us. They told us, work hard, and the system will take care of you. But it was a mathematical anomaly, a temporary alignment of demographics that will never happen again. The pyramid is flipping upside down. Here is why the experiment is ending. The first factor is longevity. We stopped dying thanks to antibiotics, heart surgery, statins, and modern medicine. Living to 85 or 90 is now normal. Bismarck designed the system to pay you for 2 or 3 years before you died. Today, the system has to pay you for 20 or 30 years. That is an exponential increase in cost that was never factored into the original model. The second factor is the demographic collapse. We stopped having children. Birth rates across the developed world have plummeted below replacement levels. In 1950, it was 16 workers per retiree. Today, in the United States, it is fewer than 3. In Japan, it is nearing 1-to-1. A Ponzi scheme only works as long as you have new investors to pay off the old ones. We ran out of new investors. The base of the pyramid is shrinking while the top is getting heavier. The structure cannot hold. But there is a third factor, a silent killer that destroyed the old pension model, the shift from defined benefit to defined contribution. Up until the 1980s, companies offered pensions. This was a defined benefit. The company promised to pay you a specific amount of money every month until you died. The risk was on the company. If the stock market crashed, the company still had to pay you. But corporations realized this was becoming too expensive as people lived longer. So, in the 1980s, they introduced the 401k. This is a defined contribution plan. The company doesn't promise you anything in the future. They just help you save a little bit today. They shifted the risk from the boardroom to the living room. Now, if the stock market crashes the year you retire, that is your problem, not theirs. If you outlive your savings, that is your problem, not theirs. The corporate world quietly washed its hands of the retirement obligation, leaving the individual to navigate a complex financial casino alone. And finally, the fourth horseman of the retirement apocalypse, inflation. Even if you manage to save $1 million, what is that $1 million worth in 20 years? The Federal Reserve and central banks around the world have targeted a 2% inflation rate, but the reality is often much higher. Retirement is a fixed income game in a variable cost world. When the government prints trillions of dollars to fund its deficits, they debase the currency. Your pension check stays the same, but the price of bread, electricity, and property taxes doubles. You are slowly suffocated by the loss of purchasing power. This is the silent depression eating away at the elderly. So, what happens next? What does the future look like? You don't have to guess. You just have to look around. You already see it. The golden years are being replaced by the working years. We are witnessing the return of the geriatric workforce. Walk into a Walmart or a grocery store. Who is greeting you? Who is bagging your groceries? Often, it is someone in their 70s or 80s. They are not working because they are bored. They are working because the math failed them. They are working because their rent went up, their medicine costs skyrocketed, and their Social Security check didn't keep up. Governments everywhere are quietly admitting defeat. They are raising the retirement age. France, Russia, China, the UK, they are all pushing the age to 67, then 70, then 75. They are doing it slowly to avoid riots, but the trajectory is clear. They are slowly walking us back to Bismarck's original plan. You work until you die. The promise of a fully funded, leisure-filled retirement was a 50-year lie sold to the baby boomers. For millennials and Gen Z, that door is closed. The lock has been changed. This sounds bleak. It sounds terrifying. But it is only bleak if you are relying on a broken promise. The invention of retirement made us passive. It made us outsource our future to the state and the corporation. It made us weak. The solution is to reject the concept of retirement entirely. Do not aim for a cessation of work. Humans are designed to work. We are designed to create, to build, to solve problems. The idea that happiness equals doing nothing for 30 years is a modern delusion. Instead of retirement, aim for financial independence. Aim for work that you own. Aim for assets that pay you, not a government check that inflates away. In the old world, you relied on the king. In the new world, you must become the king of your own microeconomy. You must acquire skills that do not age. You must acquire assets, land, gold, profitable businesses that cannot be printed away by a central banker. We are returning to the historical norm. The brief holiday from reality is over. The safety net is tearing and the illusion is fading. It is time to build your own parachute. Retirement was a bribe. Independence is a responsibility. Which one do you choose? History has the answers. I'll show you where to look.